tell us exactly when you resigned, and also what led up to it. Was it I can't take this anymore? There are now 27,000 people, Palestinians, who've been killed in Gaza. More and more hate crimes here in the United States. Or was it more of a longer burn than that for you? Explain what happened.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was I can't take this anymore, but I couldn't take it from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And the reality was, as a Palestinian American, as the only Palestinian American political appointee at the Department of Education in particular, I, for a while, felt alone in, how this was affecting me on a very personal level, how, I felt like my identity did not matter, that it was being erased, the constant dehumanization and the language that the White House was using, that they were essentially directing agencies to use in all of their communications related to this ongoing, like, horrific violence that we were seeing. It made it extremely difficult to continue to do really important and really good work at the department, because it just eats at your heart, at your soul, like knowing people who are directly affected, who are losing their lives, who are suffering from collective punishment, who are just trying to survive, and not only enabling the dehumanization and violence, but actually financing it and greenlighting that violence was too difficult to bear. I did everything I could while I was there to raise concerns about the language we were using, raise concerns about the policies and how it was affecting people's lives in a very real way. Having conversations with the White House, having conversations with the secretary and the chief of staff. I think there was a level of empathy that I got from my building, from the Department of Education, but
Right.
personal empathy and understanding of what I'm going through is not really what I needed. It's not what millions of Palestinians, both living in the region and also in the broader diaspora, need. We need, like, to see actual policy change. We need to see a shift in how we talk about Palestinians, how we talk about Arabs and Muslims more broadly, and we need to treat them with dignity and humanity that they deserve, just like any other group of people.
Yeah. And you're not alone. I mean, from reports, early reports and ongoing reports, both within the State Department, right? I believe there
Yeah.
have been, although they haven't gotten a lot of press, and I'm wondering, am I wrong? There have been dissent cables, correct,
Hmm. Yeah.
about Blinken and Biden's approach to this, support of this war. But like no one's really covering that. It's like your staffers are telling you. I mean, and again, people are being policed for what I've said. It's like entry level State Department people could tell you that this is stupid, this is foolish, to say nothing of murderous, genocidal, and Islamophobic. Like this is bad policy, and that's just kind of fallen on deaf ears.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just entry level State Department people, it's White House interns penned a letter to the president, like essentially condemning his ongoing policies and in the region. It's been widespread across the administration. We've seen, letters from USAID, we've seen letters from anonymous staffers from dozens of different agencies, like you said, numerous dissent cables that have subsequently been leaked.
Yes.
The widespread nature of the dissent is almost unheard of, and even more so is the president and his unwillingness to waver from this, like, ideological mission to provide just unending support without any consternation, without any concern for, you know, both the growing regional, like, issue, and, like, risk to Americans, but also, like, the democratic risk here in America, as, like, he continuously talks about the risk that Trump is, but ignoring his entire base and essentially burning his base and the vast majority of Democratic voters that, support an end to this violence, support an immediate and permanent ceasefire. And I mean, it's creating a real risk that, like, Democrats lose the election because he is unserious about listening to Americans in battleground states, but just Americans in general.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan, please feel free to jump in. Um, but I think it is also so cruel and difficult because as someone, a young, obviously Palestinian American, but like a young person who's like trying to do some of the things that Biden wants to run on, like student debt relief, um, and trying to do the good that we have to sometimes dig when it comes to this administration to find, and then having this like, yeah, greenlighting of genocide happen simultaneously, that must feel, and also being Palestinian American must feel so disgusting and so difficult and also such a disappointment. Like such a disappointment. I mean, I felt this way since the beginning. It's like, okay, well, he can get reelected as long as he doesn't start World War III. Oops, you know what I mean? Like this is, here we go. And I guess I kind of wanted to also ask you, being at the Department of Ed and seeing the way that campus activism has been so brutally misconstrued, policed, like crazy Zionists, attacking students at Columbia with skunk spray. I mean, shit that like when I was a, anti-war Palestinian, pro-Palestinian activist back in my day, like we would never see that kind of stuff. But like, how did that impact you all in the Department of Ed? Were you being pushed into condemning, pro-Palestinian activists, or how did that work out?
Yeah, I'm so glad you raised that. And I wasn't at the department when the Columbia students got attacked with chemical weapons, but it's just so horrifying that that is even a sentence that I'm saying. It's even
Yeah.
more horrifying that we're hearing effective silence from the broader media and from the administration about that issue. Like, it is horrifying that students are being subjected to that, and that there is not a broader investigation that, that we're aware of about what's happening. But the reality is that, like, I think the department was very sensitive to a lot of the issues on college campuses. Um, we heard from a lot of different groups. It was really important that we, brought in a broad spectrum of stakeholders, institutions, academic leaders, faculty, staff, students, affinity groups who represented, what exactly was happening on college campuses. There was never really a push to condemn the actual activism. And I think we felt very strongly about how important it is to protect students' freedom of expression. But I think we could have gone a lot further to ensure, beyond just the actual civil rights implications, which is, I think, what the White House was really comfortable with the department staying within the confines of, which is strictly saying, like, hey, colleges and universities, you are obligated to comply with the civil rights laws under the Higher Education Act. And beyond that, don't say a lot more about this because it's a really touchy subject. And
Mm,
the unfortunate reality is that, like, students are being affected. There's a huge overcorrection to, protect students, but actually just to silence any sort of dissent that colleges feel uncomfortable with, any sort of
yeah.
expression and speech. And I think that there are real risks, especially in the context of a lot of the right wing extremist questioning on the Hill, from representatives like Stefanik, who really weren't interested in what is really happening on college campuses, what students and faculty are really saying on college campuses. And it was not in the interest of actually protecting students from real anti-Semitism, which, like, we absolutely should be doing. It was a political exercise to
Yes.
essentially put pressure on college leaders to undermine academia's independence and integrity. And I think
Yeah.
in circumstances where, Democrats have been very vocal about um, condemning book banning and silencing of academics on issues like gender identity and gender equity and social justice issues and critical race theory, like, we've heard absolute silence when it comes to Palestine. And I think that undermines academic institutions and their integrity. And I think this is a really huge long-term issue that colleges and for the Department of Education, they haven't fully grappled with.
I think that's so perfectly put. I agree with you, and of course, the resignations of these presidents from Harvard and UPenn, right?
Yep.
Just like prove that incredibly. The refocusing on DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and instead of actually focusing on the real issue, which is that anyone who speaks out for Palestinian human rights is immediately called anti-Semitic. it truly, and I think, and Jordan, please jump in after this, but I do think that, as someone who has always believed in ending the occupation, always believed in Palestinian liberation, but also maybe didn't have it at the forefront. I'm not Palestinian American, didn't have it at the forefront of my political sort of like barrier, sort of my bar, in terms of like who I like, who I endorse, whatnot. Now I'm like, no, this is the issue. This actually exposes a whole lot. And it exposes a whole lot, especially when it comes to foreign policy, of course, but also here at home when we truly are trying to combat white nationalism. We're trying to combat anti-Semitism. We're trying to combat the right, and we're trying to combat Islamophobia. We all should be in the same, on the same side here, but we're shooting our own people, right? And we're throwing them under the bus. But Jordan, jump in.
Thanks. So I'm wondering about the resignation and the response itself. I think Francesca and I, maybe you, but I don't want to speak for you, have concerns about the administration, especially the Biden campaign's inability to recognize just how discontent people are and how upset people are over this issue. I don't think they're taking that anger very seriously and the risk it poses to 2024. I mean, there's a potential that this could effectively swing the election in favor of Trump. So I'm wondering what the response was from your colleagues, from other administration officials when you did resign. Were they understanding, or did they just treat it like any other resignation?
I definitely don't think it was treated like other resignations. There was a lot of understanding from the Department of Education. I had a lot of conversations over the course of a few weeks because I wanted people to understand that this wasn't about the department, the work that we had been doing that I still continue to believe in, or any individual or interaction that I had. This was strictly about just policy differences on issues that we didn't work on every single day. And as a representative of the administration, I could not continue what I'm doing. I could not continue to represent the administration that I just didn't believe in anymore.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people understood. I think it resonated with people from my building, but it also resonated with so many other people who I heard from in the subsequent days and weeks after the resignation. I heard from like colleagues from the White House. I heard from colleagues in state and USAID and labor. I mean, I probably talked to, dozens of different people at this point who continue to try and do really important and good work within the administration, who have expressed their solidarity and support for me, want to check on me and make sure I'm doing okay. And the reality is like it
You're better than ever.
reminded me that that is totally true, but it also reminded me that like there is a real level of dissent that I don't think that the president and the campaign really fully grasp, and their willingness to just take really aggressive and weird like steps to try and bring in other people into this big tent that like they're also ignoring the people who got them there to begin with. And I think it's so dangerous. Like I don't know, it almost feels like this like campaign manager like brain rotty, like we're gonna do the cool creative thing to bring in people in a way that like it just like totally undermines like the actual strategy that like showed real success. And it's also undermining like all of the good work that the administration has already done and the goodwill that it's bought with so many different communities. And I think like young people of color, like their voices matter now more than ever, and you're completely ignoring what they care about, whether it's border security and immigration, whether it's Gaza, whether it's climate change, student debt, gender equity. Like those things really matter, and you have to listen to your voters and show them that you're going to work in their interests.
We're speaking with Tariq Habash, who's a former senior official at the U.S. Department of Education. If you're just joining us, I never do this, but sometimes, people pop in. And I guess going along with that in terms of like reading the tea leaves here, first of all, you're not the only official to have resigned. I do want to mention Josh Paul, who was from the State Department, who was an early resignee, which was interesting in terms of just like, I don't think we should be sending this amount of weapons to Israel. And this was like in early October. He believes is short-sighted, quote, short-sighted, destructive, unjust, and contradictory. But obviously he's been proven wrong. I mean, look at where we are now, about to head into a war with Iran. I don't know. It truly, and I don't know if this, does it help at all, Tariq, that like Joe Biden is clearly ideologically aligned with Zionism, like that he is, I mean, it feels like he's like a 17-year-old on a birthright trip, just like, I love it here, nothing's wrong. Like he just, like, does it help to know that he's ideologically an idiot, is what I'm trying to ask you. Like, it, for me, it sort of helps, but it also makes me more mad because he's literally not listening to anyone, including like Blinken. We're talking like 3 weeks into this, assault on Gaza. Blinken says on, I think it was Meet the Press, he's like, there's no military solution to Hamas. I know there's not. And it's like, you just said the thing. You said it. You said you cannot bomb your way into peace. And we all know that to be true. So what are you doing about it? Nothing. He's back here. I mean, I guess he's now in Qatar or Saudi Arabia doing something, trying to work another deal for a semi-permanent ceasefire that's just gonna, like, anyway. So there's no question here attached, Tariq. I'm just talking. I'm just vamping. But yes, sort of like, the idea that he hasn't course corrected. And if he doesn't course correct, I think you're right that this election, and, Jordan and I have been talking a lot about this election is in jeopardy for him. And it is truly one of those things that is like, nah, it's on you, dude. Like, this is on you. This isn't on getting Taylor Swift to endorse you. This isn't on, just a bunch of like TikTokers changing their mind. This is on you to turn this thing around. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Can we just like quickly talk about like the reality that like the campaign thinks that Taylor Swift is going to be the savior is like so crazy, because you're relying on like a billionaire white woman who, like, it's just like elites relying on elites to solve a problem that has nothing to do with them. Like, your policies are the things that people are seeing, and like the videos of like children and women and doctors and journalists and aid workers being killed and mutilated and like losing limbs, like that is what is causing record low poll numbers. That's what's causing you to be losing to a literal insurrectionist who is on trial in every major battleground state by not insignificant numbers. Like,
yes,
Taylor Swift and her like teenage white girl like supporters are not going to be the people that save you here. As much as like we want to believe that like if Taylor Swift comes out in support of a ceasefire that maybe like things will change, like it also, like, it is not going to change anything any more than like, I don't think that like a single musician can change the tides of like presidential polling. Like, the reality is that like voters are smart. You have to treat them like smart, independent people who look at information and evaluate that information.
Yeah. I do think, however, and I did tweet something to this effect, that in the early days, that if the only thing that could stop Israel was if Taylor went to Gaza. Now looking back on that, they would have killed her. They definitely would have killed her. And not looked back and have been like, she deserved it. She was, an anti-Semite. She had a copy of Mein Kampf somewhere. But yeah, it is. And this is so what I was saying, I think to Jordan a little bit ago before you came on, was I am getting that 2016 Clinton feeling. And that is the feeling of, pipe down, children. We got this. We don't need you to win. We don't need your vote. We'll get this with suburban women who are mad about abortion rights, as if those are the only people who are mad about abortion rights. And we'll get this with, former Trump voters who don't like the fact that he may or may not be convicted of a felony before, the election.
But
just
like, let's
up.
talk about the abortion rights stuff for a second, because like, didn't that ruling come down during the administration? Like, didn't we have all this time to address that and fix that and use executive authority to like protect women's rights and like to protect like women's right to choose? And like the fact that we were in power and didn't do that, and you're like, oh, abortion is on the ballot. Like, if it was, then we should have fixed it if we care about that. Like, let's stop being so cynical and realize that like when you have power, you have to prove that you're wielding that power effectively. And if you're not, like, why are we like just basing this off of the other guy is worse? Like,
Yes.
let's actually start doing good stuff. Like on student loans, like I actually think we did some good stuff. Like lean into the good things that you did, not the other guy is the boogeyman and like we can't let that person come in. Like that is true too, but
also pointing people the fact that you didn't preempt this, even though we all saw, I mean, the women's marches in the wake of the Trump election were largely, and they were very well attended by people of all genders. It was about the loss of reproductive rights that we all knew the writing was on the wall. Like everyone knew that. That's truly what it was about. And so as soon as you get into power, you need to Trump proof this motherfucker. Like, and you need to reverse course immediately. And speaking about the Middle East, I mean, what he did was double down on Trump policies in the Middle East. Speaking about the border, what he did was double down on Trump policies on the border. So, you know, we are having a massive, oh yeah, this is the guy who we elected. It's not on us. I don't think that folks who voted for Biden are to blame, but this is who we elected, right? This is not about like, oh, we should have withheld. No. We made a defensive vote, and I'm not against defensive votes either then or in the future, but this is who this person is. What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do